Okay, now I can. Okay, so everything that your organization does focuses on conversion, not on how to move people along that spectrum. I'm going to use this spectrum in another way in just a minute. So we tend to focus only on conversion, but in rural areas, the currency, if you don't know this, you need to write this one down. The currency of the ministry you're doing is relationship. You save it and you spend it. And when you spend it all, you need to update your resume. Um, um, everything. That's why it takes so long to be the leader of the church. It takes a long time to develop enough relationships necessary for people to trust you. Does that make sense? So evangelism then must expand just beyond that conversion phase. What happens is when you go to a meeting, they start with method. Okay, I'm I'm here from the suburbs of Atlanta, and I'm going to show you how to grow your church. I'm going to show you how to witness. This was successful in the suburbs of Atlanta, and it'll work in the suburbs of Athens, Ohio. And you know, how many times have you gone to a meeting where and you come home and your wife says, "Well, how'd it go?" And says, "Well, it was beautiful stuff, but that dog won't hunt in my field." You know, this is great material if you lived in the suburbs of Dallas or Los Angeles or Las Vegas or Detroit even, but it's not going to work where we are. And it's because people start with methods versus strategy. Strategy is where you're taking the time to do the diagnostic before you do the prescription. Am I making sense, everybody? If you'll just nod every once in a while, I'll just keep going. Okay. So methods then are what you do, like 3 circles or share Jesus without fear, the Roman road, whatever it is. Strategies are how you do. They answer the questions like why, and they're the bigger picture things. Most evangelism methods tend not to focus on strategies. Now, I said all this to get to here's my main point. These next few slides are what I want to get across. So hang with me. I'm going to go through these very quickly because I want to honor your time. There's different types of evangelists in your church. Okay. We're going to talk about gifted evangelists, timid evangelists, and non-evangelists. Okay. Now, I'm not saying this is the way it should be. I'm not saying this is what Scripture says. I'm just telling you this is what you have in your church. Okay. I want to go through each one of these and help you to figure out how to help them be involved in evangelism. Now, the goal here, as much as I tried this for years when I first started out in ministry, is how to get everybody to become gifted evangelists. Well, that's not going to happen. How do we help them to be and then the thing is, how do I move a non-evangelist to timid? And that's a great idea, but that very seldom works either. How do we get a non-evangelist to do something? Okay, and so let me talk about them. This is a non-evangelist. This is my cousin Troy, and that's the church back there that I was showing you the picture of a while ago. Troy goes to that church as well. Now, why do they? I'm going to come back and tell his story in just a minute. Why do they not witness? Well, they will tell you, I don't have the gift of evangelism. And for Troy, he's a quiet Southern hillbilly. He's very shy, and he's not good with words. Also, somebody who became a Christian at about 45 after a whole bunch of problems in his life, he feels, what can I say to people? Man, I have messed up my life royally. Now, as much as you want, these people are never going to come to a witness training event. And you have these in your church. You can say, next week we're going to teach the surefire way to share your faith, and and nobody's going to argue, nobody's going to complain, and it's going to be perfect. They still won't come, but they still feel guilty for not witnessing. They are simply not going to use a traditional evangelism method. Does that make sense? Everybody with me? Okay. Let me talk about timid evangelists. I didn't have a good picture of somebody there, so I just found something online there. How do they witness? Only to family members and close friends. And once they have that relationship and they feel safe, they'll attempt to witness a little. And they will reluctantly attend your evangelism training if you ask them and cajole them and put a little guilt on them. They'll show up. These are the ones that frustrate a lot of pastors. And why don't they witness more? Why can't we get them to witness? Okay. And then you have the gifted evangelist. Again, Cliff Art is our friend. How do they witness? These are enthusiastic and they witness all the time. The problem with these is they can sometimes be annoying, right? You got people in your church, they witness to the point that you wonder, are they doing more harm than good for the kingdom? But they'll excitedly come to all your evangelism training. They want to improve their skills, and they're constantly looking for the next surefire method. Okay. So in looking at your church, if you look at your church along this spectrum, I've got in my church, I have, you're already thinking of people in your head. This is a non-evangelist. He's not going to witness to anybody. Here's a timid evangelist. He might do a little bit, and then you got gifted evangelists. And the last time I taught this, I had about 20 pastors in the room, and I asked, how many of you feel like you're gifted evangelists? And not one of them raised their hand. It's not a requirement to be a gifted evangelist to be a pastor. Your job is, though, to equip the saints to do the work of service. So knowing these three, now let's break each one of these down and talk about how can they actually do something for the kingdom. Okay? Now, this doing something does not involve a specific method. We're not going to be able to give them a method and we're not going to use shame or guilt to motivate. Everybody with me? So here we go. Non-evangelists. This group needs a doable strategy. Coming back to Troy, my cousin. Troy fell in love with Jesus, changed his life, is a stalwart member of the church. My parents have been forever the matriarch and patriarch of the church. And if you don't know that little rural churches have matriarch and patriarchs, keep your resume updated because they're in your church, and you can have any committee you want, but everything still has to run by them. You know what I'm saying? Unofficially. Well, Troy is taking over that position as my parents are now 88 and 87 years old and have kind of aged out of being the matriarch and patriarch. So Troy has become that. So I asked him, Troy, how do you do evangelism? Being so shy and quiet and reserved. And he says, well, watermelons. I said, pardon? He says, well, watermelon. You know what a watermelon is, boy? I said, yeah, Troy, I know what a watermelon is. But I don't understand how that has to do with evangelism. He said, well, I grow them. You're still not getting me there. You're going to help me. So he says, I grow them, and when they get ripe, I put them in the back of my truck. I drive through the community, every house in the community, and I drop off a watermelon and invite them to church. His philosophy is, I catch them, y'all clean them. He knows everybody in the community. He doesn't know a Roman road, but he does know I can give them a watermelon. That gives me a tool, a technique, a reason to be at their house and to invite them to church. And so he says, here's a watermelon from Liberty Baptist Church. Just want to invite you to church. And if you come, I'll meet you at the door. And then that's about all he can say in one setting. And so he gets in his truck and goes to the next house. He has expanded because that was so successful. He has expanded to where he's growing a garden. That's the picture you see in the on the sidebar there. Troy standing beside those sweet potatoes. He grows about an acre and a half garden for the community, and he shares the produce with the people in the community. They can come and pick it. If they can't pick it, if they'll call him, he'll pick it and bring them to them. So for him, inviting people to church is success. Okay. He's not gonna learn the minor prophets in alphabetical order, but he is able to give them a watermelon, give them some green beans, and invite them to church. So service projects are a way for a non-evangelist to do something. Are y'all familiar with, it's called Bless now, I think. It used to be Bless Every Home. Are y'all familiar with that program? If not, you should look that up. It gives you the names. You can set the parameters for whatever you want, 20 people, 40 people around your house. You put your address in, it gives you the names of the people immediately around you in a circle, and then you can begin to pray for them and begin to lift them up by name. And so Troy thought this was great. I put this app on his phone, and now he knows everybody within not they didn't know, but it gives them a better way. And so every day he gets an email to pray for 5 people in his immediate area. And so Troy said, I can pray for people. I can do that. Knowing their names now makes it better for when I take out watermelons. So this is a tool. And service projects, again, repairing homes for Troy, this garden on the church property, prayer walking, or in rural areas, prayer driving. The goal is to get the non-evangelists to a place where they can invite somebody to church. I used to say when I was young and arrogant, I used to say, don't invite people to church, invite them to Jesus. But I've learned that if you can invite them to church where our gifted evangelists can invite them to Jesus, that's still a pretty good step. And I'm going to move on because I'm going to run out of time here. Timid evangelists, they need more than a service project. They need a safe environment where they can share. There was a cute little movie several years ago called We Bought a Zoo. And in that zoo, the man is telling his children how he first met his wife, who became their mother. He said, I was walking down the street and I looked in the window and there sat the most beautiful woman I ever saw at a coffee shop. And he thought to himself, 20 seconds of insane courage. That's all I need is 20 seconds of insane. So he goes inside and starts a conversation with her, which begins the relationship and through which he's married and the children are born. So what we're trying to do is figure out, how do we get the timid evangelist to have 20 seconds of insane courage? One of the things that I'm going to give you a couple of examples, and these examples are not, they may work for you, but these are ideas to get you thinking of what might work in your community, not prescriptions. Understand? So the first one is tithing. I try to get churches to teach their people to tithe one night a month. In that one night, you invite somebody to your church, to your house for dinner, who doesn't go to church. The thing is, people will come for ice cream long before they'll come to Sunday school. They'll come for dinner long before they'll come to Sunday school. So what you do is you invite them to dinner, and that they come and you go, well, we're thankful to have you. We're getting ready to eat our meal. We go to Liberty Baptist Church, and before we eat, we pray for our food. Is there anything in your life I can pray for right now? Then you pray. And then after you pray, you say, we would love to have you come to our church too. We meet at 11 o'clock on Sunday mornings. I'll meet you at the door. So that's 20 seconds or maybe 90 seconds of insane courage. Okay. Another one is Lighthouses of Prayer is another example of something you might be able to do, where you take the 10 houses 5 on each side of you, 10 on each side of you, however brave you are, and you just go to door to door. You probably already know these people now by name in a rural area. So you go door, John, I'm Jeff Clark. Hey, John, I go to Liberty Baptist Church, and we started a new prayer ministry. Is there anything in your life that I can pray for right now? And you got a clipboard and a pen, and you're taking down notes. And they say, yeah, well, my cousin's been awful sick. Can you pray for my cousin? You'd be surprised at how seldom people just turn you away. It's not near as bad as people think it is. Almost everybody will have a prayer request. Everybody has a need. And so you pray real quick, dear Lord, be with this brother's cousin. He's going through a hard time. We pray that you work in their life. And I pray, God, that in a very real way, you show them just how much you love them. And in 6 weeks or 2 months, you go back again. And every 2 months or so, you just keep going back. The idea is for the lost people in the community to say, I don't go to church anywhere, but if I were, I'd go to their church. They pray for me. You're trying to get the timid evangelist into a safe setting where they can do 20 seconds, 90 seconds of insane courage. Okay? Gifted evangelists, they only need to be challenged. They want to know what witnessing methods and techniques will work. And for them, any method will work if you'll work the method. Y'all, maybe some of you might be old enough to remember years ago, Lifeway came out with Faith, Faith, every finger, and it meant something. And I thought that's the hokiest thing I ever saw. The church I was in West Virginia at the time. The church I was in decided to do that. And that little church of 65 people at the end of 2.5 years of doing Faith had 269 people. So it grew by 200 people almost exactly in a 2.5 year period. What I learned there was any method will work if you'll work the method. And for gifted evangelists, they just say, give us the next method, we'll take off and go. They need to be reminded not to make the others feel guilty. Now, I've run through this in a lightning speed thing. Let me give you a couple things. You need to develop a strategy that involves everyone in your church. If you focus on methods, you're only doing the gifted evangelist, okay? And so you need to think about, how do I prepare people to minister on their level? And then you need to challenge without using guilt. Does that make sense? And then every strategy, this applies for everything you're doing. You need to have intentionality. If you don't have a plan, nothing's going to happen. A lot of pastors get caught just trying to go week to week, trying to get the next sermon, but they don't realize where they're trying to go, what they're trying to accomplish. And the goal is to reach everybody in your community with a gospel presentation. Next is accountability, general reminders to help keep people on track. This is what we're doing. This is what we want. How many of you were able to tithe one night a month this last month? I want to hear testimonies, and with that, you celebrate when they do something. Okay, let me stop there because I want to honor our time together, and I've rushed through this. But now I wanted this to be a starting point actually for discussion or questions. So looking at that, what comes to your mind? What questions do you have? What comments do you have? I know this is a very crazy different way of looking at your church. And again, you can tell I didn't steal this from anybody else. So questions, comments, statements.
It seems like you're advocating for regular training, and I kind of wanted to ask everybody, how often do you guys do an evangelism training, a dedicated, intentional, either experiential or classroom time of evangelism training for your church? I'd say I'll start. We probably only do one every other year.
And some of this type training needs to be done probably in the worship
I've not
time to
heard of
get people
one.
who won't come. You've not heard of one? Is that what you said, Miss Skaggs?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would be similar to Josh. Right now, we're about every other year. One of the things I found, kind of like what Jeff said with the pastor who preceded me, one of the things we were curious of is how do we kind of hit a broad brushstroke and then work it down more individual. And we did, so our church it was established long before me, but they do memory verses once a month throughout the year. So we did 12 verse series that was focusing on evangelism. And then that was 2023. But it seems to me that the broad brushstroke is just more of a reminder, kind of that call to awareness of the Great Commission and our desire to share the gospel. But what I have seen be more effective is it's a very slow and rigorous process. But if I work one on one with either a person who has a desire to share the gospel or a couple, it seems to me that, and that's definitely drawing from the evangelism explosion method, but it seems to be more effective, though slow, if we do just one-on-one training, like, hey, let me just show you what this looks like, and then aid you in kind of growing in that yourself.
Right. And but don't get trapped into doing a model, a
Sure.
method, as opposed to life on life. I had a guy in Michigan, CWT had come out when I moved to Michigan and started church. And so I trained and trained and trained. I took this guy out, we visited, and I don't know if you CWT or EE had a FIREGOGO, all this stuff you had to memorize, friends, religious interest, religious question, exploratory question. And so I was just having no luck, and the people were visiting. So one day I said, Kurt, big old barrel-chested man, I said, it's your turn. Kurt knocks on the door, and a guy comes out, and he says, we're with Grace Southern Baptist Church, and we just want to know, do you want to get saved? I go, oh, goodness, Kurt, you've done everything wrong you can possibly do. And the guy says, you know, my cousin's been talking to me about that, but he hadn't told me what I need to do. Can you tell me what I need to do?
Wow.
And Kurt said, yeah, here's what you need to do. And we prayed to receive Christ right there. And we get back in the car and we're driving off. Kurt looks at me and says, see, it ain't that hard. I go, you just ruined everything. All this training, all this. I was so focused on the method, I forgot to focus on the people.
Yeah.
You know. So, and I guess that whole thing is about looking at your people. You have non-evangelists. How do I help them do something? And how do I celebrate when they do something? Growing watermelons, building a porch for somebody, something that they can actually do. But the timid evangelists, how do I get them next step? Maybe fixing cars or witnessing some safe way. But it's more about people and relationships than it is about methods and programs.
I don't know if this is part of the discussion or not, but one thing we do to help cultivate a culture of that in our groups, in our model, we have people pray weekly in their groups for one person that they're investing in, praying for. So before we try to get the heart in the right direction. I'm very much, we do things corporately to facilitate evangelism, but we also try to engage our small groups and our discipleship groups to be engaged. So each person has someone in their sphere of influence that they're praying for directly. And it seems to me that when you get someone praying for that one, that they automatically, their heart is more prone, their concern is deeper, and then they're easily more easily to share the gospel. And so it's like muscle memory, right? Once you get one muscle moving that direction, then their heart in evangelism starts moving that direction. So that's just something handy that we do. It's part of our accountability in our groups. And I just think I think starting out with prayer is probably a great way, but personalized prayer,
Well,
who
and to
is that
Jeff's
person in
to
life?
Jeff's point too, that's something a non-evangelist can do and will agree to do.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Well, and I taught this last week here in Virginia, and a guy come up to me who said, I taught a class, and about every 6 months in my church, I pass down hoodoo cards. Three by
What
five
cards? Say that again.
Hoodoo. They're 3x5 index cards, and who do you know that needs to come to church?
Gotcha.
And they put their name on it and an address or phone number or some kind of contact information. They take them home, bring them back the next week. And this gives you a list that helps you to know how to, as a pastor, to pray. But as he's leaving, he had a non-evangelist, and he says, here, why don't you take 3 of these and just pray for them? And the guy goes, well, I can do that. And he looks at him and goes, well, I know one of them. In a rural church, you're bound to know at least one, if not all 3. And so he took it as his project to get that person at least to come to church. And he said, I'll go over and visit him. Well, glory, hallelujah. We were successful. But that any one idea is a great idea. If we can get you to praying for at least one person, specifically by name, that's a fantastic idea. Somebody else, there's something that through the PowerPoint and what I said this morning, connect or disconnect, or you want to rebut, or
I'll jump in here. I think one of the things that you said that really resonated with me was any method will work. Any method will work if you work the method. I think if we treat people not like projects, but relationally connect with them, especially in our area, where I'm at in Chillicothe, especially. I find it just like the gentleman that shared before, I think it's Shane, shared about just doing life one-on-one with people and walking with them. If that may be sort of like, if you're not even as quote unquote somebody who loves to evangelize, you try to find ways that you can connect with people, maybe to grow watermelons, or if it's helping somebody fix something on their car, that will lead them to see that you have a love for them. They come to be interested in the gospel in your life more because you're sharing your life, you're investing your life with them. People then builds equity to share more with them. So I would say, yeah, just I think sometimes we have these methods and we treat them as like projects, the people that we go after versus, like we genuinely need to love these people. We want to have a relationship that goes beyond a long-term relationship, beyond just the, hey, you came to know Jesus, great. Let's get you to church. Let's start to grow and disciple you more. So I appreciated that comment that about the methods, because there's so many methods. I've been in several churches where we've done EE, we've done Way of the Master, we've done the Romans Road, we've done faith evangelism, and all those methods are great if you work them and if you do it authentically in a good relationship going forth with that person. And sometimes that doesn't start with the gospel. Sometimes it starts with just genuinely loving that person. So yeah, I would say, yeah, for us, as far as what Josh had asked, and I think you have asked, Jeff, as far as how's our church do evangelism training, honestly, we need to do some more of that in our church, in our context. And I love hearing some of the other gentlemen at their churches, what they're doing. But yeah, I think it's something we need to practice more and model and help our people in what does that look like as pastors and shepherds. So that's what I'd have to say. But thank you, Jeff, for your teaching. I took something from it, so thanks so much.
Well, there you go. We're looking for pearls or diamonds, not a necklace. So one thing that I state too in this is, if you want to be successful in ministry in a rural church, you have to be willing to drink gallons of bad coffee. sit in people's houses and drink their coffee and hear their stories. It's about the developing relationships to be heard with the witness.
I really liked your quote about if you're going to be in rural ministry, you got to be relational.
Yeah.
I really push that. I call it relational equity. And
Mm-hmm.
once you put relational equity into someone, whether it's someone you're discipling or sharing the gospel to, so like I have 2 or 3 guys now that's not my church that I'm just either I take out for coffee. I don't do bad coffee. I will rebut that. I am a coffee snob. I bring my coffee to people's houses. So,
Wow, you are a coffee snob.
but that being said, yeah, we invite people in for coffee all the time to spend time with them. I mean, we build in our budget, our staff to go out to eat with people to invest in them. We try very hard to build that relational equity, and I think
Mm-hmm.
a lot of city. I'm also involved in some churches that have larger city context, and they don't understand the relational equity piece as much as
Correct.
I think rural people do. You do nothing in a small town without having relational equity, whether it's coaching or anything. So, what I would say is teach people how to look someone in the eye and say, how's your day going? How's your kids? And that small talk and that investment leads. I have a guy in my church right now that just talk about evangelism. We did some ministry with a secular drug addiction crisis center thing. And I started this guy, he needed work. He started painting in the basement of our church. I just spent lots of time. Now he's an intern at my church. He's married. He's at Liberty University getting his Bible degree. And it's basically just a lot of time put and spent this morning. I spent years waking up at 4:30 a.m. to meet with this guy at 5 a.m. And I just think that I think I'm not a method guy at all. I think, share the gospel. The Holy Spirit will do the work, but we have to put the investment in. So I don't know. I appreciate the whole content and context, what you're sharing. I think you understand role very well. And, we're all hillbillies in here, I'd say. So that being said, speaking the same language is helpful, but I think I'm not as worried about training as I am building a culture of evangelism. And that's
Correct.
2 different things.
Correct.
Well
I'm
said. Well
actually
said.
concerned about
Yeah.
trainings of evangelism. I'm more interested in the culture of evangelism.
Yep.
So
Mhm.
that would just be my little input. I don't know, that might not be helpful, but that's how I handle it.
Well, I tell people, if Timothy evangelists, if we can give them help them with their testimony in one verse, they've got 2 guns they can fire now.
Yeah.
We can add more tools later if we want to, but if we can just teach them, everybody knows John 3:16. Everybody knows their testimony. You're ready.
I think the worst thing about evangelism is most people can't articulate their faith.
Right.
They're not mature enough to say, I came to Christ because I was.
Right.
And that's the greatest opposition to evangelism I find is people just don't have a testimony that they can share.
Right.
And I think to that point, Jonathan, we have found, or I have found that some of the best outcomes for evangelism training is not so much that people are necessarily always super equipped to go out and share the gospel, but they actually understand the gospel better for themselves. They understand what they've given themselves over to, and because that, like you said, I agree wholeheartedly. They have to really grasp that and understand it and be holding on to it before they will really be able to help somebody else with it. And they can, of course, we can share what we do know and not hold back from that, but until they really understand, what they've done and who Jesus really is in their life and the importance of that, and they've grasped it, I think that's a big challenge. And then the culture part of it, I think, is a great point too. That's obviously what we're all trying to get to. I would suspect as New Testament churches, trying to get to the place where our purpose is spreading the gospel, making mature disciples for the nations. And one of the things we have found, I think Jeff, you did mention in your presentation, prayer walks, and that made me think I hadn't thought of it in these terms, but we have done prayer walks for a couple of years now, it has really helped us with the timid evangelists, I think is what you would probably classify them as. I hadn't thought about them exactly in that way, but looking back now, I can see how that translated, because it gave them an avenue to go and be a part of a group and not be a lead, and they could kind of see a model play out before them. So we have certain people who are kind of leaders, and we're gifted in that. And so we'll go door to door and we'll talk to people, see people on the street, and we'll just kind of talk to them and pray for them, or start up, friendly conversations, just relational connections. And they see that play out before them. We've seen people take that next step, like going up to the door, being willing to even just knock or say hi to somebody, like who they're introverts and they wouldn't do those kinds of things. And we've seen them just kind of be able to take those little baby steps towards saying, "Hey, Jesus is worth it." And I see other people in my church doing this with me and modeling it for me. And so I think that has been super helpful too, to model that for others.
You said something there, Chris, about being introverts. Do you guys find that most of your church are introverted? Is that a small town thing? Is that a rural thing? I don't remember this in the suburbs. When I was in
Why do rural
Pickerington,
people live in rural communities? Because they don't want to be on top of one another. So a rural person, I always say, is a person that will shoot you if you come across the property line to steal something, but they'll give you the clothes off their back if you're
Yeah.
broke down. So like,
Yep.
it's an odd combination. So you got to
is
teach
this
them to be
is this
rebellious
true
as well.
worldwide, Jeff? Is that what Jonathan just described? Is that true pretty much any rural area?
Pretty much. Sometimes you're stuck where you are, say in rural Africa. It's harder to get to urban settings. It's harder to get to places, but in general, that's pretty much true. People are rural for a reason. Did I lose you, Josh? I have everybody else, I think.
I don't know. My internet lags every once in a while.
Okay, there you
I'm in small town Ohio.
go.
Hey, we're getting fiber optic, Josh. Are you?
Yeah, we've got the option. It's a long story. I'll tell you later, John.
Hey, I don't know about you guys, but my Josh's Uber Eats, he sends me Uber
No,
Eats.
don't tell them that. That wasn't for everybody. No, I'm just kidding. John texted me a few minutes before the start and said, "Hey, you're buying, right? Where's the Uber Eats?" Anybody else have any questions or comments for Jeff?
Yeah, one question.
Jeff, could I
Go
get a
ahead,
copy
go
of
ahead.
your presentation? Oh, sorry.
Yes, I'll send it to Josh.
I was just wondering.
Yeah, Jeff, if you'll send me what do you got it on, PowerPoint or PDF?
Yeah, it's a PowerPoint. I'll send it to you.
And I can send it as a PDF or something like that and send it out to everybody. Good question,
I appreciate
Tina.
that. That way I can share with
Jeff, I had one question for you concerning developing a strategy that involves everyone. There's a lot of pastors on here, and that's a broad statement, developing a strategy for everyone, because there's so many different people in the life of the church. How do you think, have you seen churches that have done that successfully in the rural setting? And I guess I missed some of your PowerPoint, so you might have forgive me if I missed a segment that spoke to that a little more. Could you just hit on that one last time if you have? And I know it's relational.
I'm sending a bigger PowerPoint that has a lot more slides when I teach this for an hour and a half. So it'll have more in it. And if you have questions about what you see, always feel free to write me back. I'll be glad to dialogue with anybody. But most of the churches that I've seen that are successful don't have a written out strategy, but the pastor has an intentionality. That he comes beside somebody like my cousin Troy and says, "What can we do to reach people in our community?" And Troy says, "You can do anything you want as long as it doesn't include me." So now we got to get him to go, "Well, what could you do?" "Well, I can grow watermelons." That's why I don't want the temptation is when I give examples for those to become your plug and play things you're trying to do. What they are to do is to give you ideas that come completely completely yours. again, I'll give you another example. My home church got down to about 6 or 8 people, and they brought in a young man, 25 years old, who had taught a Sunday school class. He'd never pastored, and now he's pastoring 6, and the church jumped immediately to about 90 people. I mean, just took off like crazy. And one of the things he did was VBS. Well, he'd never led VBS, didn't know anything about it. So as one of their activities, he taught the children how to shoot bow and arrows. I'm going, oh goodness, I'd have never done that in a church. I can see 6th grade boys with bow and arrow shooting one another or shooting each other in the foot or something. But it was contextually relevant to his church, and they responded. It's like, okay, I want you to think of something for the non-evangelist for your church, and you're going to walk them through that. And for me, I'm a person who I would probably write out a strategy. I'm very much schematic, but the main thing is the intentionality. I'm going to walk with my non-evangelist. I'm going to walk with my timid evangelist, and I'm going to help them to be able to come up with something in their area to help reach people for Christ. Am I making sense?
Yeah, that totally makes sense to me. That helps me just, finding a way that everybody can be included. If it's just, hey, I'm just a farmer, but hey, can I pick up some food and distribute that? And that could be as part of of buying in and helping in the kingdom build it and evangelize that area. So yeah, I mean there's lots of different talents and gifts in all of our churches. So I think that helps to be reminded of that there is a part that every person plays, even if it's not the role of like loud and proud evangelist out in front, knocking on doors and sharing the gospel with people.
Have any of you guys, sorry, Jeff, have any of you guys used like verbiage to help cultivate maybe, like ours is lost, saved, mature, multiplied. And so we just hammer that. We don't want just people lost coming to attend. We want lost, saved, right? So that's opening. We're going to deal with, we're downtown. We're in the most urbanist rural part of Gallipolis. And we're right down, we've had people drunk, people homeless, all that come in on Sunday mornings. And so I tell our congregation all the time, we want to see lost, saved, matured. So now we want to be developing, growing, but matured, multiplied, meaning we want to grow small group leaders, and we just, we want church planters, so if you're talking about developing a culture, Joe, I think that verbiage that you can hammer all the time, that's quick and witty, is helpful because it's so broad, but it's also pointing their minds. Wait, I'm going to see a lost person in my pew. I pastored a church one time that didn't like lost people. And I'm like, what? Jesus loved lost people, And so anyways, I think it's really, I love to hammer stuff like that, to be honest with you.
I appreciate that, Jonathan. That's good. I mean, I'll take that to, heart and think through that for our church. And again, it's just nice to hear what other churches sort of do and what they build into the culture of the DNA of their church, and what they speak is. And again, I think Jeff spoke to this too, like what we celebrate those things that are good, that God is doing, and be about that, because people get excited when they hear what God is doing. And yeah, and then just be a praying church, have a dependency on the Lord. And I heard that through Chris sharing about prayer walking and doing that in neighborhoods. So just there's a lot of work to be done, but I'm thankful for all you brothers sharing things that are working in your context.
But you have these crazy things. My dad was a non-evangelist, and the preacher asked him if he'd pick up these kids and bring them to church. Well, there's like 3 of them, little hoodlums from a poor ragged house, and he picked them up. Next thing you know, my dad's picking up 15 in 3 different trips, bought a van so he could pick up kids. That's something he could do as a non-evangelist. The pastor said one time, think of the last person in your community that you would think would ever come to church. I want you to start praying for that person. And I said, well, I know who that is. And Jimmy Sales. Jimmy's never going to come to church. He's been antagonistic about church. Every time I talk about what we're doing at the church, he's ugly about it. And so the next time Dad saw him, he said, well, I'm going to try again. He invited him to church. Jimmy came 2 weeks later, prayed to receive Christ, and 10 years later, when he passed away, was teaching a Sunday school class. You know, those kind of things help move people from non-evangelists to at least timid evangelists. You know, those kind of things, once they get experience, once that's celebrated in their life, they're willing to do more.
Well, it's a redefinition. I did the same with my dad. My dad said, I can't knock on doors. I said, who taught you that's what evangelism is? How about your backyard fence? Can you lean over it? And sure enough, he worked with his neighbor quite a bit from that relational equity, like Jonathan was calling it. Guys, I want to thank you all for joining us. Like I said, I'd like to do this every once in a while, just so we can have a good discussion on a good topic. But I want to especially thank Jeff for making time for us. I know you're a busy guy, but man, it's huge to have you come here and talk to us a little bit about this topic. Thank you so much, Jeff. Anytime
you want a crazy idea, send me a note. I'll be glad to join you.
Hey, I just love talking to hillbilly PhDs, man. It's fantastic.
Well, I'll tell people I'm one of the few Appalachians that can speak Chinese.
All right, let me close this in prayer, and then you guys can get out of here. God, thank you so much for our time together today. Thank you for Jeff. Thank you for his ministry in understanding a very important cultural context the world over. Just thank you for his time, for his research, for his insight. It's just amazing how when he talks through things, it resonates with us. And so now I pray that we'd go and we'd apply what we've learned or what you've put on our hearts today. Maybe we've relearned. That we'd walk beside our people, not necessarily just to train them and fill their heads with information, but to build a culture that fills their hearts with a passion. And so I pray that for each of our churches in our region. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Blessings, guys. Have a good rest of your week. Thanks again, Jeff. Bye-bye.